It's been a while since we've done a review here on the channel. I know you guys like the discussions more, but from time to time it helps to look at specific games and their narrative content. Plus it gives me a way to complain about stuff in games I play, so here I go. Geralt is back, and this game picks up right where we left off from the previous one. Geralt is now employed as head bodyguard and one-man army for King Foltest, the king he saved in the previous game. Unfortunately, Geralt proves surprisingly unfit for this post, as the king winds up dead due to his neck finding the wrong end of a knife. To deepen the mystery, the would-be assassin is in fact, dun dun dun, another Witcher. To make matters worse, the assassin escapes and Geralt takes the fall. But just as things seem darkest, one Vernon Roche shows up to interrogate Geralt. Geralt tells his side and Roche becomes convinced Geralt is telling the truth, and the two hatch a bargain. They set off to find a killer, and in doing so shape the future of the Northern Kingdoms, yada yada yada. Let's get one thing out of the way first, the mechanics. Oh boy. The controls for this game are a mixed bag at best. Gone is the rather odd rhythm combat of the previous game. Now it's more of a standard swing, roll, strike form found in many action-adventure games with some RPG stats underneath. More straightforward. Having said that, they are rather clunky. Good luck trying to target a specific enemy in the heat of battle. Hit detection is also an issue, as my Geralt got whacked quite a few times despite what I felt was a successful dodge. Oh, and did I mention the difficulty curve is a cliff face? You'll be hearing me imply mixed bag a lot during this review, since the whole game seems to have fixed some design issues only to lose something in return. For example, mixing potions is much more streamlined. Select a recipe of some basic elements and BAM! New potion. Also, the potions provide very temporary stat boosts, so if you screw up and poison yourself, or the boosts are not what you wanted, the effect doesn't last very long. Easy peasy. And that's why I don't like it. One nice thing I felt about the first Witcher game is that brewing potions was a deliberate activity. You gathered your ingredients, went to a campfire or resting point, and brewed what you needed for the upcoming fight. You also needed to consume potions at said resting point, but they lasted for a long time and had a real impact. You felt like an actual monster hunter preparing for a fight. This game has a lot of these types of decisions. On the one hand, I can see why such choices were made. On the other hand, they provide instead what's arguably worse, or takes away something in order to implement the solution. So mechanics and immersion, mixed bag. But you guys are not here to listen to me gripe about mechanics and such. You want to know what I think of the narrative. A quick disclaimer, we're going into heavy spoiler territory. If you haven't played the game yet, and will be very angry with me, click on this nice soothing link here. I won't mind. For the rest of you, here we go. And bear with me, there's a bit of exposition to follow. So the main choice is made at the end of the first chapter, in which you decide to continue to work with Roche or sign up with Iorveth, a member of the Scoia'tael terrorist group. Why would you join with Iorveth? The idea is that he's going to hook up with a resistance group of non-humans trying to carve out a country fighting against local monarch and all-around scoundrel King Henselt. Chapter 2 takes place in the same area for either path, but on different sides of a conflict. On Roche's path, you'll link up with King Henselt and his crew of tyrants. On Iorveth's path, you will join the battle on the other side of non-human freedom fighters. Either way, Geralt's job is to lift a curse on the battlefield that the armies would have met on were it not for the fact that you have ghost armies duking it out for eternity, preventing the two sides from engaging. Chapter 3 takes place in the ancient city of Loch Mun-Wi. What you can do here depends on which path you chose. Either you help Roche rescue King Foltest's kids, you know the king Geralt didn't protect and all, or you can help Iorveth save Saskia, the leader of the non-humans. Or you can abandon both and try to rescue Triss, sexy sorceress that Geralt has a thing with. How do I know all this? Because I played the game twice. See, I chose Roche's path first and was convinced that I had just played a medieval version of a Tom Clancy novel. But as I did research for this game, a lot of people seem to think that Iorveth's path was much better, so I gritted my teeth and played it for a second time. For you guys. Feel loved. So how do I feel about playing the game twice? I'll give it credit for one thing. The two paths have almost a completely different narrative feel to them. Roche's path is the pragmatist one. Getting involved in politics only to further Geralt's mission is the main theme of that path. On the other hand, Iorveth's path is the idealist. You join up and fight for a free country where human and non-human are welcome against a tyrant. Yarr. Having said that, you'll still wind up doing a lot of the same things as well. Lifting the curse in Chapter 2 is the main story quest for either path. Ditto for the final fight in Chapter 3 against an actual dragon. Finally, there's only so much variation on the ending. It turns out that Letho, the Witcher who killed Geralt's king that started all of this, was actually hired by the big bad empire to the south, in order to destabilize things before the coming invasion. How successful he is depends on your actions, but ultimately things go to pieces. The game narrates the end and things look kinda bleak regardless of your actions. Geralt may have affected the outcome, but it's a lateral effect at best. So why is all this important? Well, I'll admit I've struggled quite a bit with how I feel about the story in the game. Primarily because it seems like it tells a different story depending upon which path you take. The narrative feel is so different at first I felt the story had no real point. Ditto for the characters. One thing I'm really frustrated with the series is that while Geralt seems to know interesting people, these relationships seem very static. There isn't any real growth between the Witcher and the crew. This is especially true for Geralt and Triss. Though they have a romantic fling going on, neither one of them seems really serious about it. This is especially true since Geralt is still a sexual libertarian. That's right, the ability to bed women is back in this game, but toned down a bit. While the first game, you can bed any woman with a pulse if you gave them the right gift, in this game your options are much more limited. Having said that, these trysts are fleeting and don't really add anything to Geralt as a character. This is especially annoying since this also doesn't seem to have any impact on Geralt and Triss's relationship. Maybe that's one of my biggest issues with these games. The game tries to allow for maximum player choice, but as a result the characters seem to just orbit around Geralt. They never struck me as independent characters in their own right. In fact, the most interesting character for me was Vernon Roche. King Foltest's right-hand man, who is part CIA spook and part Special Forces commando, seemed to be his own character with his own mission in life. And while his methods can be charitably described as morally flexible, at best, he seemed to have his own code of honor and could be quite charitable to Geralt, even if Geralt didn't deserve it. Everyone else seems to wait for Geralt to do things. So the main question facing us is The Witcher 2 a pragmatist story or idealist? After much thinking I came to the conclusion that it's neither. It's actually very fatalist. The ending of the game makes it clear that things look very bleak. Geralt may have influenced the geopolitical field before the Empire comes rumbling in, but regardless of your choices, things look really dark. It doesn't help that all the people in power all took the same Machiavelli course on how to rule kingdoms. Everyone is a conspiring, amoral jerk that leads directly to them being manipulated to killing each other. Letho didn't have to do much to have everybody at each other's throats. Geralt is ultimately powerless to stop the outcome, in my opinion. The best he can do with his choices is limit the damage. Regardless of the path you take, you either make things worse, indifferent, or provide potentially some hope to a better outcome. The paths you can take spell out a less than hopeful choice, though. The pragmatist route that Roche represents is the path where Geralt remains neutral, except when he needs to get his hands dirty to achieve his goal of finding Letho. Geralt does not fight for any greater good. At best, he fights for himself and those he cares for, like Triss. The path of Yorveth says that even fighting for noble causes is ultimately futile. Successes are temporary and ultimately fleeting. Either way, the world is hosed. Now, this doesn't mean that all choices on the paths are so stark, or that this is even a bad game. There are pragmatic choices on Yorveth's path, and idealistic choices on Roche's path. In fact, Roche is somewhat an idealist. He fights for a kingdom's future that looks very bleak, but ultimately it's a fatalistic narrative in the end. I'll have to play the conclusion in The Witcher 3 to know if it was worth it. Middle stories tend to be bleak to set up for the grand finale, but the narrative doesn't offer any real hope like other narratives do. There isn't a counterbalancing portion of the narrative that suggests that all is not lost. There's no Frodo or Sam to root for as the Battle of Gondor begins like in Lord of the Rings. Will it be worth it? I'll find out. Sooner or later. That's all for now. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.